This is going to be a PSA. It's a bullshit alert. Okay? Everybody, no matter what they're trying to fix on the internet, you have to really, really vet your sources, and you actually have to know that you just about have to know the answer before you go looking for the answer. You know what I mean? Because you get somebody telling you stuff that's just absolute and complete nonsense. This is just my 064 that I have on the bench just because it's sitting here. There's no reason why it's sitting here really. But this guy here, he has a 064 for sale, a red lever on Marketplace for $400. It's in Cedar Rapids, and that's a 3-hour drive for me. Red lever. Says it has an OEM piston and carburetor. Can't figure it out. Probably something simple, he says. Probably something stupid and simple. Has 120 pounds of compression. Part of the case is broken off. The part of the case that's broken off is right where the inner dog hooks up at the top, where you can see this bolt, like right here. This corner of the case is broken off. Not a huge deal. It can be dealt with. I want you to watch this video.
Replace it with fresh Moto Mix. Moto Mix is consistently
And I
reliable, so
recognize
that's
the
why I
guy,
use it in all my
his
testing.
picture on Facebook Marketplace. I recognize
The
his
first
picture.
thing I'm going to do is take off the air filter and clean it, as well as the air filter housing.
This is the guy that runs the channel called AMG Pro. It's Asset
I'm going to try to start the
Maintenance
solid fresh gas.
Group is what it stands for. Asset Maintenance Group. Just watch.
Since I couldn't get any more power out of the saw, now I'm going to dig a little deeper, check the carburetor out, replace the spark plug, and go from there. I only use NGK or Bosch spark plugs. Remove these 2 nuts to access the carburetor. And look, there's no tank vent. The old line rotted and fell off, so I replaced it with this new one. So let's go ahead and try the saw and see how it works. The saw was flooded a little, but I got it started. Saw starts a lot better and has way more power. As you can see, pretty simple fix, but could have been a couple things. Could have been the rings, could have been scoring on the piston. So those are important things to check. I checked those with the hang cord test. I was having good compression, so I did not pull off the front of the muffler and check out the piston. But if I was losing compression, that would be the very first thing that I did. The second thing it could be a carburetor that's having issues. But of course, before I get to the carburetor, I'm checking everything out, and I'm looking at the tank vent. I'm looking at everything else in the saw. And of course, the second thing it could have been was a carburetor. Carburetors have intermittent running issues like that, but it also could be a tank problem. So on this particular saw, that was the issue, the tank vent. So if you don't build up the pressure in the tank, it's going to have intermittent running issues, and it's basically going to starve that carburetor for fuel. That is why the saw ran on idle, because it was able to pull enough fuel to idle the saw, but when you went full throttle, it was not able to pull enough fuel from the tank because it did not have a proper tank vent on there and it had an air leak. So just remember, these are pressurized fuel systems. You need to be able to pressurize it in order to get the fuel delivered to the carburetor, so that way the carburetor can mix it with air and get it inside the combustion chamber. So before you start throwing a bunch of money at a carburetor or a piston or something else, make sure that you guys are thoroughly checking the system out. It can be something very, very small. Even just that little tank vent can cause the same issues, the same conditions, the same symptoms as a piston and carburetor can.
What he just told you is complete and total nonsense. That is not true even in the remote least at all, even remotely. Okay? The tank vent, everybody knows this, except for him apparently. Okay, but if you don't know this, if you are one of those people that are having problems with something like this, the tank vent is there in order to resupply the tank to atmospheric pressure when the fuel gets used by the saw. Okay, the saw is drawing fuel out of the tank and burning it. If there was no way for air to get back in and replace that fuel, it would start to draw a vacuum. And then it would draw such a vacuum that the impulse line could not run the carburetor fuel pump properly to get fuel out of the tank and into the carburetor. Okay, you can run with that tank vent just like you saw before he put a hose on it. You can run with an open tank vent all day long. It will cause no problem at all. It will not do anything except leak fuel. It will leak fuel if it were super full and it just ran right out the vent when it got really hot and whatever. Even though it wouldn't really expand because you would have an opening to atmosphere. Okay. The real problem is when you start to tilt the saw on its side, like you're felling a tree, you're stumping, something like that. Then all of a sudden it starts to run out the vent. You have to have a vent somewhere, and that's where they have it. And the vent consists of a piece of hose with 2 grub screws in it so that enough air can get sucked past those grub screw threads, okay? But fuel really can't get out. At least it can't get out very fast. So the second thing that you absolutely do not want to do is you absolutely do not want to start a saw and pin the throttle just like he did, okay? I am very sure that this saw right here is the same one that he has on Marketplace right now for $400 that has 120 pounds of compression, and I have a very good idea of why it has 120 pounds of compression. When he says, hey, I tested the compression with the hang cord test, don't do that. Don't test compression with a hang cord test. You can really screw yourself that way because you don't know that you don't know if the rewind could be hung up, it could be hanging up, it could be what it's just not accurate. It is a absolutely gross test. Okay, it is a gross test to see if it has any compression. If you pick it up by the cord and it just falls straight on the floor and bounces off the floor, okay, then that might be valid and you might want to look further. You need to look in the front of the muffler, you need to look down the piston, you look down the spark plug hole, and you need to look through the carburetor. You need to be able to look at both sides of the piston and the top of the piston before you're buying anything, okay? Or when you're diagnosing anything. You need to be able to see all that stuff. The easiest way is just take the fucking cylinder off the thing, especially if you're working on something like this. Very easy to take the cylinder off it, just take the cylinder off it and have a look. If you pin the throttle when it's cold like that, and you just pin the throttle and you just hold it there, he thinks he's unflooding it. What you're really gonna do is you're gonna cold seize the engine. I think that's probably what he did. He's probably got aluminum transfer up and down that cylinder now because he pinned the throttle and the cylinder is not expanding as fast as the piston is. And well, guess what? That piston's gonna get tight. It's gonna keep on going. It's gonna start sloughing off aluminum onto the cylinder wall. That's where his compression went. That's what I'm guessing. And I'm guessing that this is the same saw that he has on Marketplace right now. Probably something simple, he says. Probably something stupid and simple. Okay, guess what? When you have 120 pounds of compression instead of the 150 it should have, 30 pounds of compression went somewhere. He says it has an OEM piston and a carburetor. Now, is it an OEM piston and a new Chinese carburetor, or an OEM piston and, no details? No, it's a Walbro HD15. It's a Walbro SD. It's a WJ69. It's none of that. None of the, OEM Stihl piston and rings. No detail. I don't know how this guy got into fixing stuff, but I have seen stuff on some of his other videos. It is also complete nonsense. Whether I can use his video or not, I don't really care. If I get flagged on YouTube or something, or he sees it in pictures or whatever else, I don't really care. This is really, really, really bad information, okay? If he thinks that saw is fixed right now, that saw is nowhere near fixed. And again, it's probably the same one that he has on Marketplace right now, and he knows it's nowhere near fixed. I can tell it's nowhere near fixed just by the way that it runs and the way that it starts. Oh, it was just flooded. Why would it be flooded? Why would the saw be flooded? You took the fuel out of it, you put in Moto Mix. Why would the saw be flooded? I didn't hear it burp once, and then all of a sudden it's flooded. He cuts away, it's a cutaway, and all of a sudden there's, the saw is running, the second time around, after he replaced the tank vent, and that was the supposed problem. That was not why the saw didn't run, and it's not why it didn't make it up to speed. These tanks do not have to have pressure how would they build pressure? How are you building pressure in the tank? You mean you have to slosh it around and you have to wait until it rises 30 degrees in order for it to build pressure so that you can use the saw? Is that what you're saying? He's just I don't know what he's doing. I really don't. But this is a gross it's just gross information, misinformation. These tanks do not have to be pressurized. The only reason that they build pressure is because gas is volatile. When you slosh it around, when you heat it up, when it gets warm, it expands. The vapors expand. Okay? That's the only reason why it builds pressure. But it does not need to have pressure in order to run. It needs to have an impulse. Okay? It needs to have an impulse going to the carburetor so that the carburetor can pump fuel from the tank into the carburetor. It has nothing to do with the tank being pressurized. It will run if the tank is pressurized, and most tanks will be pressurized if you're using them in the heat. You're kind of tilting them around and they're moving around and whatever, sloshing around. Of course it'll build pressure. But you don't need pressure for the saw to run. And the tank vent was not the issue. And he's finding that out right now, trying to sell this saw. Be careful who you listen to. You don't have to listen to me. You don't have to listen to anybody. Just be careful who you listen to, because what he's saying about this is completely false. That's all I'm saying.